And I'm going to say good morning and welcome to our fourth Counselor Coffee of the year, I believe. So we are rolling so far. This is a specific Counselor Coffee Roundtable or Catholic Colleges Roundtable where we can talk about, there's a special relationship that exists between Catholic Memorial and some of our local Catholic college partners. And so I think we're going to sort of dive into that a little bit. It's more Mr. Wizard than how the sausage gets made, but we kind of want to say, okay, this is the how behind everything when we kind of know that relationship exists. But as I've been doing, Joe, Mary Lou, and Christine, I'll have you all introduce yourselves in a second, but as we kind of do the awkward beginning of the Zoom, wait for everyone to get into the room, we've been doing icebreaker questions so everyone can get to know you a little bit. I think this will be, I keep on saying I watched a lot of Billy on the street while I was in quarantine, so I'll sort of kick it to you this way as we can all get to know each other. But in our office, this is my favorite question so far. We are no longer allowed to use the word unprecedented to describe the fall of 2020. If you can't use that word, Joe, what word would you pick instead? And then we'll go around the horn.
This is the one question, Jack, you didn't prep us with before the meeting started this morning. So if I can't use unprecedented, and I have developed a certain aversion to that word as well, but like something similar, we've been going with unparalleled or unanticipated, which account for a little bit more of the volatility in the day-to-day that we're all seeing.
Christine, what's your new word?
They love to say, not historic, but I guess there's the official language and then the language you use in the office, which are two very different things. We call it interesting times. That's the like, bless your heart kind of way to say something.
So I think for our office, we don't really, like, I think we were using unprecedented a lot too. I would have to say if I had my own personal word to use for this year, I would say adventurous. Our students need to be a little bit adventurous and understand that, and flexible, and understand that just like we're being flexible with things, that they also need to be flexible and know that this is something that they've never gone through before, and they have to, move on with that. And again, look at it as like any opportunity that you have to kind of challenge yourself, I think is always an adventure. So that's how I would look at it.
We got to stop saying pivot too. Like that, I feel like that's another one. No more pivots as we go through the rest of this year. So Christine, on our next icebreaker question, I'll start with you. We all just spent roughly 6 months out of our lives stuck in quarantine where we couldn't leave our house. What is one show or movie that's streaming that you just didn't get around to watching?
I never actually jumped on the Tiger King bandwagon. I know I tried, but it was a little too much of a train wreck for me.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. At the beginning of quarantine, my fiance and I were in like a 600 square foot apartment. So he didn't want to watch Tiger King, which meant I wasn't watching Tiger King. So yeah, we never got on that bandwagon. I definitely felt like I was a little left out, but I've caught little bits of it here and there. So who knows, maybe I'll go back. But I think that the time has passed.
The phenomenon is over. Yeah. Mary Lou, any shows, movies that everyone keeps on recommending to you, you just didn't get to?
Right now, in my household, it's Cobra Kai. I'm an 80s kid, 70s, 80s kid. So it's big in our house, but I haven't yet sat down to actually watch it. But it is something that is on my list of to-dos.
That's fair. That's fair. Joe?
Sure. So, my guys are a little bit younger. We got kind of a late start, so we're watching a lot of children's programming. So, for parents who are out there who might have outgrown that, with your guys being in high school now, lots of Paw Patrol, which we're all getting a little weary of. On the mom and dad side, we have a lot of series we never watched, right? That we're starting to catch up on if we can stay up late. So we're a little behind. We never did. A few series, but I think one of the things we really want to do next is get back to some of the old classics. So I think AMC is re-releasing Mad Men. We might go back and revisit the past in the coming weeks.
Let me just say, as the parent of a young child, Spirit Riding Free on Netflix is a good show. Like it is, like I love horses. I love the West. Like, hey man, empowering young girls. I'm here for it. It's all good. All right, let's dive into the meat of the program here. And I think one thing that we might have come through a little bit is Christine, Mary Lou, Joe, and I have all worked very closely together on different things over the past few years. All three have spent a good amount of time on actual Baker Street instead of virtual Baker Street and know our campus well. So like Mary Lou at St. Anselm last year, we had a bus trip up there. I think all three guys who went on that bus trip ended up enrolling at St. A's. So just like a very one-to-one great connection there. Christine at Merrimack was our first virtual rep visit last year. So she sort of in a time in March when people really didn't know what was going to happen next, Christine jumped out and, you know, again, it was a very new thing. I think, unfortunately, it was the first time we've ever had a Merrimack visit and we didn't have anyone show up. And so I think she came back later, but I mean, typically Christine's a very popular woman on campus. And then Joe, who I'm referring to as my first Don Rickles because he's the first repeat guest on Counselor Coffee. He jumped out early. So there's a real, if there's a close, warm feeling this morning, I think it's probably because all of us have spent so much time bouncing ideas off of each other as we were going through the summer and kind of thinking ahead to what we were going to be doing from a college counseling angle. These are the people that I bounce a lot of ideas off of in the early round. So it's, I hope that comes through. And like I said at the jump, I think we all know that a lot of CM kids go to Stonehill or Merrimack or St. A's. And I think what we want to do in this conversation is kind of get to the why of that and pull that apart so we kind of understand what that connection is rather than just taking it at face value. So, you know, I think maybe we'll start with a global question and we'll kind of narrow it down as we go. But and Mary Lou, maybe I'll start with you. You know, when people think Catholic school and whether they're talking about CM or St. A's or Merrimack or Stonehill, one thing that is kind of at the root of those conversations of understanding it is, okay, well, this is a school with a strong community. You know, that's obviously been challenged this year with social distancing and everything else that we're doing. What are some of the traditions that sort of reinforce that community at St. A's in a normal year? And how have you and other, you know, we'll go to Christine and Joe after that, you know, what are some of the traditions that you've found ways to kind of preserve despite the challenges we're facing?
Right. Good question. So, so we're Benedictine Catholic. Benedictines are known for their hospitality. So it is a pretty community-oriented school. It is like you are joining your family once you come on campus. And so there are a lot of traditions that we have with that. We do have a monastic community here. So we have Benedictine monks that reside on campus in the monastery behind the chapel, and they take a vow of stability. So they're here until they pass away. So our students do get to know the monks very well while they're on campus. They are faculty members and administrators. And so we are technically guests in their home. And so as such, our students come in and we treat it that way. And so we're very respectful of them while we're all here on the campus. And, you know, given the circumstances that we have right now, it makes it a little bit challenging. But we have, I think we've put together like a family unit this year. And so when the students came in, they were all asked to agree to a care of covenant. And so it basically states that they're going to follow the guidelines that we put in place so that we can keep them on campus because we do want to have them here until November when Thanksgiving comes around. And so there's a couple of traditions that we normally have relative to faith-based on campus. And so students will do the alternative spring breaks. We also have a big one at the beginning of the academic year. It's called the Road for Hope, where it is sort of what you would consider a pilgrimage. They go to Lewiston, Maine, and they walk from Lewiston, Maine, all the way to campus for that first week prior to the start of classes. And so it's a big event that takes place where we're all at the entrance of the school waiting for this group of 100 students to come back onto campus that they had just walked for an entire week down onto campus. And so this year, there was a little bit of a challenge with that one tradition. We weren't able to do that given the conditions that we were in, but we did manage to do a form of it on campus. So they turned it into a challenges to walk, and it was actually done on campus where they walked the same amount of miles, but they were walking technically around kind of a path on campus with their masks on. So that, they modified it and they were still able to keep that tradition. So it was great for them. And last year, our students were able to do the alternative spring break because the COVID, the shutdown kind of hit after they returned. So they were able to go to their locations and continue with that. I'm not sure how it's going to be. My guess is that it will not take place this year because they have canceled study abroad for the whole year.
Christine, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I should just jump.
We're all friends here.
I'll just go next. So yeah, to similar points, the community piece is important. It's a big reason why a lot of these students go to our schools is because they are looking for that piece. They've had that in their high school career here at, CM, at previous schools in their elementary years. And so that is really important. And that's very much a part of our identity. And I know a lot of these other schools' identities as well. And so, it has been tough. I think students, I give our students a lot of credit. It hasn't been an easy semester and they've really done everything we've asked of them. And I think it is because they're just excited to be back. I've talked to some of our current students and they'll admit, obviously it's not ideal. They want to be back, with no restrictions and socializing. And, one of the great things is our students wanted to be on campus. We couldn't get rid of them. But now that's been difficult for them because, that's not, what they're used to. And I think, the fact that there is such that strong sense of community, it's really held everyone together. I think more now than ever, the campus community as a whole, including faculty and staff and students, have really pulled together and have really, I think it's made everyone a lot stronger. The students are finding ways, we do a lot of outdoor activities. So thankfully the weather has been overall very good in New England this semester. But they've been seeing a lot. They're doing, a combination of virtual and in-person, and the in-person stuff is by far the most popular, the most well-attended. The students want to be doing something, even if it's not ideal. We have an intramural cup going on. So various kind of outdoor activities. They did some version of skee ball last night. They've had like a home run derby and, basketball trick shots and, things like that. So cornhole tournaments. So, anything that they can kind of get everyone together, but also activities that allow you to do your own thing at the same time. So I think the students are really adapting. One big thing that really is a hallmark of us is what we call our Mac Gives Back. So for those who aren't familiar, we were actually founded in 1947 under the GI Bill for returning veterans from World War II. And so Mac Gives Back typically always used to correlate with Veterans Day. So it was a day where pretty much, all members of campus, faculty, staff, we always had, over 1,000 people would kind of go out into the community and do various things to, again, kind of give back to our local neighbors, kind of to that hospitality idea. And this year, obviously, we can't spread out throughout the community. So they actually held a smaller version on campus and the registration, I don't want to sold out, but the registration filled up really quickly. And that was great to see. It was definitely not the experience that we're used to doing. We did it a little differently time of year, but to see everyone really embrace this big part of who we are and even in a different way was really great and really encouraging to see that the students still want to keep our traditions going, still want to, keep things moving. I'll hear students say, we have to be good because we need to make it to the end of semester, and they're holding on to the idea of spring weekend, which who knows? I love the optimism. And so you can kind of hear them talking amongst themselves, and so I think, again, it's that looking out for each other and that, we're in this together and we just want to make this as great of an experience as we can, with the cards we've been dealt. And so it's been great to see. I give our students a lot of credit, and I think they've done, everything they can to really hold on to the spirit of Merrimack. And I think that's where that community is so strong. It's one thing to say, oh, everyone goes to the football games, but how does everyone come together when those things are gone? And I think that piece of them that drew them to campus and drew them to each other, I think is really starting to shine, even if they don't realize it. And so it's been great to see. It's been a challenging semester, but again, I give our students credit. They're trying to make the best of it, and that's all we can ask of them.
Yeah, so some similar things, and just quickly, for those who don't know, Stonehill was founded in the tradition of the Congregation of Holy Cross, so the same founding order of priests and brothers as University of Notre Dame, University of Portland, St. Edwards in Texas, King's College in Pennsylvania. I think true to our identity and most integral to our identity is a campus community and a culture that is founded on the belief in the inherent dignity of every person, and the commitment that for our enrolling students, more than anything, is our commitment to make sure that all of our students can find a sense of belonging, that they can develop a home, and as Christine and Mary Lou referenced, a sense of community here, and that community's commitment to them developing both as people and as professionals, right? That intersection of our academic culture and our community and social culture. And we have a lot of traditions, right? Like a lot of schools, we have a lot of traditions that help navigate that transition from high school and into a college environment that we're really relying on very intimate and sometimes very large scale in-person experiences. And so I'll just pick two that I feel fortunate to have been a little bit a part of this year in particular. And just looking ahead at my calendar today, so later on this afternoon, like a lot of faculty and staff, I'm teaching one of our first year experience courses, right? So we have very small sections. It's basically a 1 credit sort of advisory class where we're helping students understand our mission, understand the tradition that we have, transition to college successfully, both academically and socially. And we've offered more sections, right? So we have some of our students who are remote and some of our students who are living off campus, but most of our students are here. And so preserving that in-person instruction in a very oriented, very safe, very highly protocoled environment, like what they're experiencing in their classroom, to help them navigate this process in a way that, like Christine and Mary Lou said, is different and maybe not entirely what they would have expected and imagined their first semester of college would be like. But it's also provided us an opportunity to address some transition issues, right? And to be sure that students are, maybe while they're spending less time in larger groups, finding ways to connect with the folks who are here to help them develop and flourish as they become more professional college students, and develop an appreciation also for each other and the different ideas that they bring to the class and the table. And then, I think with reference to students who are coming from a Catholic high school, and it's open, of course, to all faiths, but we often do, or every year would do a very large first year retreat, right? So we would have a retreat, it's open to all faiths, as part of their own self-exploration and trying to find their identity and purpose within the context of the mission and our commitment to fostering free exchange. And it's a very popular program that's run by our campus ministry office. And rather than doing that in sort of a higher volume sort of environment, the priests who run our campus ministry office we're doing it more often, right? So we're having smaller weekend events for more students, and that has more dynamic ways of delivery, again, to supplement some of the work that's going on in our first year experience, but also to provide an environment where students connect with each other in a little bit more of a purposeful way. And I think we've been really fortunate, like my colleagues shared, that the students predominantly are so grateful to be here and to have these experiences, and have expressed a great deal of patience, knowing what some of their families and their colleagues, their friends have experienced elsewhere, that they've been incredibly gracious and incredibly, I think, really responsible with each other as well. So we've got a little ways to go, but we've been able to preserve some of these really mission-centric things that help our students connect and ultimately find their path in a moment that's disruptive, developmentally in any year. I think really reflects the type of institution we want to be as we try to inspire students to become leaders.
I think that's fantastic, and something that we're all experiencing is probably a great deal of gratitude and pride for the work that everyone on each of our campuses is doing to overcome these things. And Joe, you sort of ended by talking about mission there, which I think leads us into where I was thinking we would go next, as we think part of the way that this talk was inspired of this coffee. I attended a session at a NEACAC once with Joe called "How Catholic Are You?" Basically, like how each school defines itself, because I've been a Catholic in Massachusetts and New Jersey and Kansas and Canada. My Catholicism has stayed the same throughout, but the experience has been different in each places. And, as you think about your own campuses, and Joe, maybe you could start this one. If a prospective student asks you that question, how Catholic are you? How are the ways that you respond to that?
It's a great question. And so I think it's important to start with the overall right context that I sort of was alluding to in the last question. And that's the most Catholic thing that we do is a spirit of hospitality. It's inherent in the mission of the Congregation of Holy Cross. It's inherent in who we are that defines us as part of our overall religion. that there is a commitment both academically, socially, culturally, that every student has a voice, there's an openness to free exchange of ideas in the arena of scholarship, that every student has an opportunity to explore, that every student should be heard, and that this is a place where all are welcome, right? And that's a dynamic that's important for us to preserve both in the classroom, in our residence halls, and in our community. But it's also a community that's expecting our students to grow, to challenge themselves, to challenge each other, and to become leaders, to become a voice for those who might not have a voice. So really inherent in our mission is the idea of compassionate leadership. We want to inspire students to stand up for others. We want to inspire our students to encourage others, and also to challenge themselves to think differently, right? To evolve both as people and as professionals. Our Holy Cross tradition, on the basis of Father Moreau's philosophy, is that all of our students are here to receive an education of the mind, but not at the expense of the heart. And so there's this intersectionality between becoming a scholar, becoming a professional in some of our more professional programs, but also they're becoming people. That as they enter the workplace, as they go on in business, as they go on in medicine, that they're doing it with a sense of compassion and a sense of service to others. I think that's the most Catholic thing we can possibly do. And it begins with some of the things that I talked about earlier, right? This first year experience class, we're bringing students in, and we're going over what our expectations of them are of good citizenship here, and also good citizenship in the world that's constantly evolving, and that they should stay at the forefront of the evolution as they go forth and become graduates from Stonehill College. So I think we're fortunate to have an incredibly relevant mission in any time, but certainly right now, given the moment of disruption we're in, socially, culturally, economically, right? And I think our students have an appreciation for that. But I think when we think about what it means to be Catholic, it really is that sense of belonging, right? That every student is here, and every person in the world has a role and has an opportunity to contribute equally. And that you see that reflected in the experiences and in the academic programs that surround us. So I'm always grateful when students have the thoughtfulness to ask that question. And I think I'd be a little remiss in not referencing some of our CM graduates who are here, who have really taken that to heart, right? As student leaders. As I look at just an example, so our president of the student body, who's right now extremely active, a leader in student government, working closely with senior leadership, participated in a table talk around diversity, equity, and inclusion ideas a couple of weeks ago. His name's Abe Medeiros. He graduated, so he's a senior now. It's hard to believe time flies, but really lives the mission, right? He lives that example as a Stonehill student and as a former CM student who's taken up a leadership position to drive us all forward. And I feel very grateful to know him so well. But I'll yield my time. So thank you.
Love to hear what CM guys are doing well. Good job, Abe. I dig it. Mary Lou, do you want to jump in here? How Catholic is CNAs?
Honestly, I couldn't have said it better than Joe said it. It's similar, very, very similar in the sense that, again, Benedictines known for their hospitality. We're very welcoming of all students on campus, even of students that have a different faith. And so we do have a multi-faith prayer room that students who are not of the Catholic faith can still use in terms of following their own spiritual path. And I think that's what we encourage our students to do, is follow their own spiritual path, but know that the Catholic faith is ingrained in all parts of the school, whether it's the education or career services, our intercultural center, our campus ministry. I think it's just ingrained in everything that we do. And so students have that understanding when they come on campus, but knowing again that they can still follow their own spiritual path. And we provide them that access that if they are not of the Catholic faith, that we will provide rides into downtown Manchester if they attend synagogue. So there's resources for them here on campus for that. But again, knowing that those students who do come on campus and are of the Catholic faith, that we offer Mass for our students. A lot of our traditions are intermixed with the Catholic faith, and so our students are able to access that while they're here on campus. But yeah, Joe couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, and then just kind of one thing I always like to kind of follow up with when you get that question or those kind of vague questions from family is, well, what does being at a Catholic school mean to you? So, for some people, when they ask how Catholic are you, it's, well, what are the Mass requirements? What's the deal? Like, it's the very logistical pieces of it. And then for other students and families, similar to my colleagues, it's, what is that overall environment? What is that value system? What is that belief system? And how does that, find its way in all aspects, and whether it's within our classes and just kind of that mission statement, in the academic sense, the service sense, the living piece. So, that's always something, I always like to kind of throw back to families to almost kind of reflect on, why is it that you're looking to continue that Catholic education? What is important, about that to you? Obviously, you had to have that reflective moment when you were deciding to move on to high school. And I always think it's great to have that moment. What am I looking now to get out of that? And I think that's always really important for families to continue to reflect, the way we on our campuses are always asking our students to reflect on who they're becoming, on where they've come from, on where they're hoping to go. I think having our families kind of reflect on what it means to them. Very much we're in the Augustinian order. So, for those who are familiar with St. Augustine, he was hardly a saint when he first started. He found faith later in life. And so that's a big part of our mission of this idea of growth. And you're not going to start where you end up. And it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to, find yourself, but it's how you do that. It's how you pick yourself up. It's how you, decide to evolve as a person. And that's very much ingrained in our, Catholic mission. And that's something that's important to us, when we're working with our students, and that's a way that which we can ingrain that, throughout the campus and throughout the experiences. So yeah, it's kind of those overarching values, and how do they really play a role in the day-to-day versus always the logistics. Like, yes, I think we all offer masses and campus ministry and coursework that students can take, and that piece of it. But again, that overarching environment and community that it really kind of, finds itself in all you do, even if you don't realize it. And I think that's very much what a great Catholic school environment can really offer students.
I think that's fantastic. And we've spent the first half of this talk so far really talking about the things that unite us. And I think it's also kind of important to identify, as we are in a charged and polarized election year, that there are things that are always sort of at risk of separating or dividing our communities. And when we think about this year, in this election, we have two prominent Catholics who are kind of in the spotlight between Joe Biden and Amy Coney Barrett. There's a lot of real world conversations happening moment to moment. I haven't looked at Twitter in the last 2 hours, but who knows what's happening now. So Christine, maybe we'll start with you. How does your campus inspire student voice without sacrificing that aspect of community that binds everyone together as people are maybe defining their faiths in different ways?
Yeah, this year particularly, and I definitely think it's the reflection of kind of what's going on in our world. I've seen the student body become much more vocal in just wanting to explore social issues, global issues, kind of really, I don't want to say embracing what's happening in the world, but really wanting to talk about it, wanting to explore it, wanting to have those conversations. I hadn't seen it previously at my time on this campus than I have now. And I think we're also having a much more socially conscious high school student now coming up through as well. So I think it's going to be reflected even more on all of our campuses. But I think the fact that it is very a student-driven kind of initiative really changes the dynamics of it. It's not something where the school is trying to be like, here, let's have this conversation. I mean, they definitely facilitate a lot of that, but a lot of our guest speakers or guest programming is coming from student groups, is coming from the student body being much more socially active. And so I definitely think it makes for a much more collegial environment when it's very much student driven. Obviously there are going to be controversial topics. In college, you have controversial conversations regardless of the election year. And I think that's always something that, our faculty and staff try to really, press that respect and that, it's about having a conversation. It's about trying to see from another point of view. And I think overall our students have been, very respectful. And if there's ever been an incident on campus where there's been kind of that outlier, you see that campus come together and kind of universally reject that, which has been great. So I think the fact that it's been very student driven on campus has really added to the kind of environment on our campus in terms of again, respect and kind of listening. And so it's been great to see it. Like I said, I haven't seen it in this kind of way previously. And so it's been great to see the students really starting to embrace the world outside of our walls, especially.
And Mary Lou, St. A's has a strong kind of political history, and you're very, very well intertwined with this. How would you kind of answer that question with Catholicism and politics and how it works in an election year?
Right. So interestingly enough, politics is pretty huge on our campus. It is, we are nonpartisan. We do not pick a side. We do have all candidates come onto our campus and talk about their policies and their issues, which is, unusual in and of itself because we are a Catholic school. And so to see that is interesting when you have, candidates that might have some different viewpoints. But I think overall we have a mix of students on both sides. So I wouldn't say that the school itself is one side more so than the other. And our students really, really get into kind of the meat of the conversation with the politics, and but in a respectful way. Like, we do not have, we have students clearly on campus that are going to have a difference of opinion. But I think, like Christine had said, people are just respectful of one another. They listen to the differing opinions. They are seeing things from a different point of view, but still holding on to their belief. But in the sense of it, with the Catholic faith, it has challenged the mission, I think, I'm sure, at times. But again, one of the things that I could say about St. A's is that when times do get tough, the campus rallies together. So it seems as though they all know that, at the end of the day, there is a goal in mind of being students, of being able to succeed, and of receiving an education, and a quality education. And those things are important, but understanding that they know that they can have these conversations in the classroom without it having a negative, completely negative impact in their social life. So I think that our students do work through that. Our professors are very well versed in what's going on in the world, and I think that they help them along. I think that's what our Conversatio program is designed to do, is to work with students, similar to a first-year program, except that it does help them with more of the public speaking end of it. So a lot of our students do become leaders because they succeeded in that classroom. And again, it's helping them overall, and it's allowing them to have these conversations without it getting to the point where it's heated. And from time to time, I'm sure, and I couldn't even pinpoint an exact time, I've never really heard it on campus of students having such a major conflict over anything. But I'm sure from time to time there are groups on campus, but like Christine said, these groups really work together, regardless of their mindset and their beliefs that they have. I think that at the end of the day, they really work together to understand one another, whether they have differing opinions or not. I think they respect that. And so that's one thing that I can say about the campus itself is, you just don't hear, and given that we are a political hotspot, you would think you'd see a lot of, kind of discourse on campus, and, but we really don't. And because I think that these students, regardless of their politics or their views, work together and try to get along well on campus. Again, they know this is their home, and they want to be in their home, then they respect each other for that.
Joe, anything to add? How's Stonehill handling the month of October?
I think it's similar to some of my colleagues, and as Christine said, I think we've been fortunate that a lot of our students have, of their own leadership and impulse, really brought these conversations forward. There's a lot of support for that in the classroom and across the campus culture. And consistent with what we talked about earlier, right? It comes with great expectations. Our students have chosen deliberately a private Catholic liberal arts education, where the goal is that we challenge each other. We challenge each other respectfully, right. We challenge each other candidly and directly, right? It's baked into the academic program and the identity of the institution. And I think being sure that we're thoughtful about creating spaces where everyone can be heard, where everyone can be respected. And as my colleague chairman, students have been to a level of inspirational, embracing that and driving that conversation forward, and preserving a culture where we're going to learn from each other. Right, that's one of the best parts of the type of education community that we offer. Is we're supposed to, even within the traditional scholarship of the Catholic tradition, right? We're supposed to challenge each other, think and debate and explore and research. And so I think it's been really reassuring that we're in a moment where there is this sort of activism and impulse on the part of our students to drive that conversation forward, to work with faculty, to work with administrators, to be sure the space is there. We're going to be televising the vice presidential debate in a very large room with lots of seats way spaced out. But we're still creating that space, right? That we have to create that space safely. But and we know our students are enthusiastic about engaging that both outside and inside the classrooms.
That's fantastic. And we sort of started the conversation with like, okay, let's do the Mr. Wizard. How does it all come together? And maybe we'll start moving from campus culture altogether and start narrowing in on just your individual offices and how, what I think is we keep on coming back to mission in this conversation, and, that overall, how does our faith drive things? And at each school, and I would include CM in this, our faith helps drive our mission, and then our mission impacts institutional priorities. And I'm sure that would be similar on your campus as well. And so I'm not sure who wants to go first, and maybe we can kind of combine things in terms of how does mission impact the admissions office? And then also when so often your campuses are kind of overlapping with UMass schools, right? And, UMass, that there's always that sticker price thing. And then there's that institutional priority of how do we balance that and sort of attract students? So, maybe we could kind of merge a couple of those ideas with just, I don't know, Christine, if you, well, you started the last one. I don't know if we want to, yeah, go, Christine, here we go. How does your school's mission impact the admissions office, and how do you read students?
Yeah, so it is a huge part. And I think it comes down to when we talk about the fit that mythical word in admission. It really is important. We are able to, we pride ourselves in a lot of the different academic supports that we have on campus, that your GPA is not the be all end all of your application. I think that's for, a lot of us have that very holistic application approach. It really is about knowing who our campus is, those missions, that value, what are we looking to continue on our campus, and who are the people that we need in order to continue that. And that's through, the conversations that we have with students, whether it's on campus or virtually, or reading their application or getting to talk to their counselors and really getting to know who they are as a person. And sometimes, I'll meet a student or I'll talk with them, or I'll read, I'm like, oh, this is a Merrimack kid. Like, I know they're going to, jump into campus, or they have that set of values or ideals that is important to us. And so that very much, pushes us forward. And I think that is one of the beauties of being, a private school, and you can kind of make your own rules in a sense that you can look at these other factors, and those can weigh just as, if not heavier than sometimes the academic piece. Obviously, we all want to make sure our students are going to be set up for success when they come, to our campuses, but, being able to look at a student and know that their values and their mission, in their personal mission in life, it lines up with ours. And that's when we really use that in the admission process. And again, it's not just you have this GPA, you took this class, you had this score. It really is about looking at that whole person. And because that is what our campus is. And so I think that's a big part of what we do in the admission office. It's not black and white by any means. And so, that really drives, what we do. Because at the end of the day, we want to bring in a class who's going to continue that Merrimack tradition and keep, the school moving in a direction that is important to us. And so, yeah, it really is a big part of everything we do. And even to the point where, our like application manual and how we read applications has our mission statement, on the front page. And it really is ingrained in kind of everything that we do in this part of the process.
That's awesome. Joe, how does mission impact, action in the admissions office at Stonehill?
Sure, and I just start by saying I would share a lot of similar talking points and themes with Christine, right? We get to look at the whole student. We get to think about things in a student's profile and a student's accomplishments, academically driven, of course, but things that we know will become significant, thoughtful contributions to our campus and community, right? So a student who's challenged themselves in different ways, we get to recognize that as we're evaluating candidates for potential places in our class. I think that mission drives from the sense that we want to create a place where students can flourish, where we can provide the supports, but we can also provide the environment and the culture where students can grow and discover. And we rely really heavily on, and I know you might have another question about this in a little bit, Jack, but on what we learn from the high school, what we know about the high school community, and especially with Catholic high schools and schools like CM, the voice of the counselor, the voice of the teacher that can speak to the parts of the application that might not come across on the transcript, which we get great transparency with, but it's that vote of confidence, that voice of the support of the community the student's coming from that says, this is a student that you want to have be and we're grateful for that dynamic. In terms of our work with Catholic schools, diocesan schools locally and more regionally, we do make a financial commitment. We know we're competing against a very abundant choice market. And that students who are coming from competitive, particularly competitive private Catholic schools have a lot of choices, and there's a pricing variable in that. So as an institution, we made a choice to offer an initial merit package. So we guarantee a certain level of $15,000 of merit for any student we're able to admit. Oftentimes we're finding, based upon the strengths of the applicants, that you and your colleagues and colleagues at other institutions are sending to us, students can qualify for more. But part of that is for us to make a statement, about what we believe to be the value of the investment families have made in Catholic education locally, right? It's a part of who we are as an institution, and it's a part of our recognition of the level of character and rigor and development that happens in institutions that share an identity with us. But I think in addition to some of those more holistic elements of the application that Christine talked about and we've alluded to here, it's being able to engage in these conversations, both with students and families about fit, about finding a place that a student can feel confident will be the best place for them. And that comes across in different areas of the application that, again, we're fortunate to have the resources and time to engage in.
So I'd like to say that all of that is similar with St. A's. Our process is all very similar. I'd like to include in that part of my responsibility here on campus is that I'm also the coordinator of multicultural recruitment. So when we're reading applications, we are also looking at our campus as a whole and how we can make it a more diverse and inclusive environment for our students. It is just a part of the liberal arts education to have a campus that we get multiple views, and so from students instead of just a one kind of sided way of life. And so we're looking for students that when we're reading applications, there might be a student who's not able to be actively involved. And so, I look to see if we have students that have to work, to help with their family household income. And so those are all things that kind of stand out for me as a reader here on campus, because those are traits that make a well-rounded student when they come here on campus and make us a better campus for it. So we're looking at all of those different things on their applications other than just the academic piece. So just keeping that in mind that, being in the position that I'm in, that's what I am particularly looking for, but also working with our admission officers that are in different territories to say to them as well, these are all things that we think are important for our school. And so just to look and dig a little bit deeper when you're reading an application to know that, those particular students are good fits for our school as well. So, but at the end of the day, it's the student that has to say, is St. Anselm College the right fit for me? And so, and we're hoping on our end that we're doing the job to be able to come across to that student that we are a good fit for them. But we do see a number of CM students. I really enjoy talking with CM students. And unfortunately, I'm not at CM this year. I was taken out of the Boston territory. But we have a great counselor that they put in place. Her name is Mercy. And so students will get that same attention, when she's reading their application as well.
I actually think all three of you have rotated off of CM as an area. It's just I like you so much, I'm not letting any of you go, that I keep on pulling you all back. And one thing I just want to add as we're talking about admissions policies and mission, how that I do I want to, not that I'm, downgrading anyone else, but Stonehill recently made the decision to go test blind, which is one of my favorite decisions of this cycle. So hopefully, I'm hoping they are not the last. That's definitely a plug for that. But as we're in a, with each of these offices, I would say that you have, when we think of a admissions counselor as a partner, not an opponent, each office finds its own way to say like, okay, let's connect with this kid and really get to know that story. Earlier on with one of our first counselor coffees, we were saying, what the heck is a holistic policy? And I think with each of these offices, it's a very intentional, let's build that bridge and get to know each other. And when we think about, again, I keep on pulling you back for counselor coffees, even though you're not on this territory. You've all three of you have spent a good amount of time on CM's campus. You've been to Baker Street. You've met a lot of CM students. How does you've read a lot of letters from me and my colleagues. How does that firsthand knowledge impact the way a student reads in the admissions process when eventually you're in the room and you're sort of talking about what their experience is? Mary Lou, do you want to start this one?
So when I'm, because I've been on campus and because I've met the students and, again, I have really good conversations with them. When I read their applications, I'm like, oh, this is a CM student. And so it just, before I even kind of dig down deep into their application, I've already have this kind of view that I know that this is going to be a good applicant, because they come from CM. So it's always helpful too that I know as I'm reading a student, if I do have any questions, that I can just reach out to Jack or any of the other counselors that are there to say, okay, I just have a question about this. And if you can just clarify, it just makes that relationship is an easy relationship back and forth to be able to get to know a student better. I think that we've just had good success rate. And FYI, this year, if you have any of your sons that are interested in nursing, we are test optional for nursing this year, which we've never been test optional before. But I have to say, the one year I got 2 nursing students from CM, which I thought was great, because that, in terms of like diversity on campus, that, males in our nursing program, that's something that we're looking for. And so to get 2 in 1 year from the same school, I was doing backflips down the hallway. So it's just, it's good to know that when I am reading those applications that I already know that that's a student that is going to be a good fit for St. A's, just for the simple fact that a lot of what they do at that school are things that they can do at our school. And so, so it's always good.
Christine?
Yeah, very similar. I think all you parents on the phone call are so lucky to have such a great college counseling office. The value of being able to just quickly pick up the phone or shoot a quick email or have them do that to us makes such a huge difference in this process. We want to try to get to know all of our students. That's why you'll hear us talk about territories, or we work with certain areas. We do that so we get to know those students really well. We get to know the high schools in and out. I unfortunately this year also rotated off of CM, but I've been working with them, oh my goodness, maybe 5+ years or something. So I got to know the school in and out, and it makes such a huge difference because, Mary Lou's point, the application comes by and you already are like, okay, like I already know that this student has this great, background in their school and all the great things that they're doing that don't always reflect on an application. You don't always get to know the everyday thing that a student's doing, but just knowing kind of the rigor at the school, the other opportunities, the service, the mission, the values, like that all already you're like, oh, this, I'm a CM student. So it just makes such a huge difference. And, there are many times where as admission counselors, you're advocating for students throughout this process, whether it's throughout the financial aid process, through the admission process, different cohorts or programs, you're constantly possibly having to advocate for people. And when you are able to develop that relationship with the student, and then on top of that, you really, again, that vote of confidence, that they're coming from, a school that really aligns with your school. And you have, the counselors who you really respect and trust, telling you things about the student that, again, you might not glean on an application. It makes such a huge difference. And I know for some students, it has been, a real game changer. And so definitely utilize your college counselors. They are your best friend through this process. And yeah, to be able to develop that relationship is something we all want to do and aspire with all of our schools. And when the school is so reciprocal on the other end, it makes this process so much more, more valuable.
Completely agree with Christine and Mary Lou. Couldn't have said it better. And I'll say that and I enjoy I enjoy our college fairs, Jack. I enjoy the visits, and while I haven't been to every single one in the past year or so, I'm still incredibly dependent upon your advocacy and your colleagues, and feel really fortunate that here, because we've been doing this for a little while now, quite some time in some ways, that on the behind the curtain side, when we are getting down into the heat of our review and our evaluation and looking to advocate and feel confident in students, know that I always work here, of course, here with my colleagues who might be a little bit more on the front lines, and certainly review all of our candidates before we finalize anything, and we'll always check in with the school council. But I know my colleagues touched on that, but felt like it was really important because how much I appreciate your invitations, right? And whether it's you or Mike, your colleagues, that when there's that moment to partner on something or to have a special visit, that I also know that it's reflective of the work that you're doing with your students, and that the culture and the expectations you have of them and their ability to transition here. And feel pretty lucky that as our students, as our CM students enroll over the course of a year, we actually get to know them pretty well, and I'm lucky I get to see them as they develop and as they become college students and professionals. So very, very reliant on these opportunities we have over the years to build a relationship and to build trust and confidence in the culture that exists there on Baker Street.
Aw, shucks. Thanks, guys. And I think a good way to end this, we've got a couple minutes left. I don't think we're going to have time for parent Q&A today, but by all means, if you want to follow up, maybe each of you could put your email addresses in the chat. So if anyone wants to reach out with a personal question about your campus, we could. But, as we're kind of thinking of that root to the fruit type of experience, maybe they come from a Catholic school, they come to CM, and then eventually they matriculate to one of your schools. You're some of the most popular destinations for CM students that a lot of our guys end up on your campuses. How do you see our students navigating that transition? When they arrive at Stonehill or St. A's or Merrimack, what type of experience does a student have once he's surrounded by those familiar faces from a feeder school? And then, I don't know, Joe, do you want to start this one?
Sure. This is full circle. And I think, one of the things I referenced a little bit earlier is that first year experience class, that again, a one credit class specifically designed for all of our students to make that transition, right? And to figure out how maybe college life might be different in some ways and the expectations we have here. I will say, inviting students into that experience and all of our summer orientation opportunities that we have for students, which we found ways to get really creative with this summer, and we'll likely adapt some things in the future. I think we have an additional layer of confidence knowing the strength of curriculum and the culture and the expectations of students who are coming to CM, right? So when we're working with students both through the candidacy process and then as we're working them on the transition, knowing that these students are coming from a program that was putting them on pace in an environment and with experiences that make them ready, especially for what we do in particular here and at colleges like us, right? Small, intentional, faculty-led classrooms that challenge them to think differently and work harder. And knowing that that's the culture, right? That's the culture they're coming from in CM, where they have to challenge themselves and each other. But beyond our first year experience and our orientation program, I think it's really about the level of commitment we have, like they would have experienced at CM, is that we're a faculty advising model. They have a scholar, but they also have somebody who works in our academic support area that's also available. We're looking around the whole student, so we're sure that they're able to develop and transition successfully, and that we're doing it with the confidence of many students who have gone before them here and really distinguished themselves academically and socially as well.
Mary Lou, do you want to pop in next?
Sure. So I think the fact that we are thousands to naturally gravitate towards one another, and it's not necessarily that they are gravitating towards other CM students. We have a good number of students from those Xaverian brothers, from those Catholic schools. They just tend to kind of gravitate towards one another. So I think that the CM student coming in will definitely feel like they're not going to feel like they're out of place. Because I think even if they are the only CM student that's coming onto campus, I think that they're going to still feel like they're in a good environment, mainly because they're going to see other students that come from other Catholic schools, particularly in the Massachusetts area, because we draw more students. Small schools, well, the chances of them seeing someone that they know in their conversatio course, which again is their first year experience course, is going to be pretty high, so I just think that that's what allows the students. And again, we have offices that are what we call experiential learning offices, our campus ministry, our Melia Center, which is our student engagement office, our intercultural center, our career services. All of those offices are offices where students become engaged in different activities on campus. And so they do tend to see each other. They don't get lost in a crowd, which I think is great about the small institution.
Yeah.
Christine, you want to take us home?
So I always kind of joke at Merrimack, if you're looking to go under the radar, this is not that school. As a new freshman gets an academic advisor, a career advisor, and an academic success coach. And particularly, they have them all 4 years, but particularly, having that wraparound approach their freshman year to really guide them. Even the most excited student to go to college, it's still a transition and they still have a little bit of a struggle. And we acknowledge that. And so we really want to give them a lot of touch points and a lot of resources, both, faculty and staff wise, but also, student wise. We do a lot of our academic cohorts have peer mentoring components to them. We do a lot of trying to connect students, especially, other years prior. This year was a little funky, but, summer and fall orientations, we have a, Facebook group that students can join, and they're really active on that, introducing each other, meeting each other, trying to find roommates, things like that. So we do a lot of intentional programming to kind of put them in front of each other to meet new people. And when I'm working with students who, are coming from a high school where we typically see a lot of their students and they are concerned about, potentially, repeating high school, I think there's a comfort level that comes with, coming from a school where, there are other people there, but at the same time, you're like, do I want to do high school again? So there's that balance that I think students struggle with. But, I tell them that you can see these people as much or as little as you want, I challenge them to try to not spend all their time together and meet new people, because it's such an incredible experience. And then you still have that core group there, for your comfort zone. I think because we have grown over the past couple of years, we're now about 4,000 undergrad has, helped with that a little bit. So yeah, we put a lot of intentional pieces into students' place. And I say it doesn't matter what school you go to. You could go to, any of our institutions. You could go across the country. You could go to an Ivy. Like, you could go anywhere. It truly is what you make of the experience. If you sit in your residence hall all day or don't engage in your classes, it doesn't matter where your school is or who your school is, because at the end of the day, it really is all you make it. And that is a big part on the student, but then also looking at colleges that give you the opportunity to make it something special. How are they going to push you out of your comfort zone? How are they going to encourage you to get involved? How are the faculty and staff going to, extend their hand to connect with you? So, when we kind of look back on that, fit thing and the ROI and all the crazy decisions that come with making that college choice, I think, at the end of the day, it's really, who are the schools that are ultimately going to give you the opportunity to be your best self and push you out of your comfort zone. And so, it is a lot on the student making it their experience, but the schools are going to give you the opportunity to make it your experience. And so I always really challenge students and families to again, look at programs and schools that, again, your students better than anyone else. They know themselves better than anyone else. And how can they, work with an institution that is really going to let them shine and kind of force them to shine in ways that they didn't know they were even capable of. So, best of luck to all of your students during this, what do we call it? Not precedented. Unprecedented.
Adventurous.
Mary Lou's the most optimistic here. I think there's no better way to end this than talking about how we all force our students to succeed, right? Like, we all push each other. I think that's a great way to think about things. And a very sincere thank you to each of you, Christine, Mary Lou, and Joe. We appreciate having you here on virtual Baker Street. We can't wait till you're back on actual Baker Street again sometime in the future.
So I'm on coverage today and I go to look at who I have coming for a visit this morning. It's actually a Catholic Memorial student.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
What do you know? Good timing. Make sure that they wear their mask and keep a good distance. They've been
That's what they have to do.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
That's great.
Have a great day. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.